They thought they could come back and take everything from me, but I had a secret plan. And now, the house isn't theirs anymore. What happens next will shock you. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video if you love drama, and comment below what you would do in my place. The early morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting long, thin stripes across the polished hardwood floor. I sat on the edge of the empty bed, my hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee, the silence of the house deafening. It had been weeks since he left on that so-called business trip, and I had kept myself busy, trying not to think about what he might be doing or who he might be with. The front door clicked. My heart skipped a beat, even though I wasn't surprised. I had known this day would come. My husband Mark was back, but he wasn't alone. I could hear laughter and muffled voices, the unmistakable sound of familiarity and comfort that didn't belong to me. I set my cup down carefully on the counter, trying to steady the calm that I had built over the past few weeks. I walked toward the window and peeked through the blinds. There they were, him and her, and not just her, but her family, unloading luggage and gifts as if they were moving in permanently. My stomach twisted. Rage and satisfaction mingled in a strange cocktail of emotions. I turned away from the window, my eyes scanning the empty living room. It had once been our home, our sanctuary. Now, it was just a building, an investment, and I had made a decision that would change everything. 2 weeks ago, I had quietly finalized the sale of the house. I knew he would return, thinking everything was waiting for him, that I had been passive and obedient, waiting to forgive, waiting to welcome him back. He never suspected that the key to our home, the one he always held like a badge of possession, was now meaningless. I remembered the day I had signed the papers. The agent had smiled at me, thinking this was a routine sale, a woman moving on. Little did they know, it wasn't just about moving it was about reclaiming my life, about showing him that betrayal has consequences. I had been careful, ensuring there were no traces, no loopholes, nothing that could tie the sale back to me in a way that could be reversed. The sound of the front door opening brought me back to the present. Mark's voice, that familiar mix of arrogance and charm, echoed through the hallway. "Honey, we're home. I missed you so much," he called, though his voice was laced with the casual confidence of a man who believed he had done nothing wrong. I didn't move. I let the words hang in the air like smoke, letting them linger and fester. Behind him, I could see her, Samantha's, smiling, radiant, as though she belonged. And maybe, in his eyes, she did. I stepped back from the counter and allowed myself a small, almost imperceptible smile. Calm, measured, controlled. They didn't know yet. They had no idea that the house, the symbol of our life together, was no longer under his control. Mark set down his briefcase and turned toward the living room, expecting to see the familiar warmth, the familiar me waiting with open arms. Instead, he found emptiness. Where is everything? His voice rose slightly, a tremor betraying his surprise. Samantha's laughter, bright, sharp, and unashamed, filled the silence. I don't understand, he stammered, looking around at the bare walls, the emptiness echoing his confusion. I walked calmly into the room, heels clicking against the hardwood floor. The sound was deliberate, commanding, a herald of the storm I had prepared. "You don't understand because you never truly paid attention," I said, my voice soft but cutting. "This was never just about bricks and walls, Mark. This was about trust, about respect, about loyalty. And apparently, those concepts are foreign to you." Samantha froze, her smile faltering. She glanced at him, then back at me, realization dawning too late. What do you mean?" Mark said, panic creeping into his voice. He took a step forward, but I raised a hand, stopping him in place. "I sold the house," I said simply, letting the words hang. The silence that followed was deafening. Mark's jaw tightened, his eyes widening as comprehension finally hit him. He looked from me to Samantha, then back at me, as if seeking some clue, some hint that this was a joke. "You sold it." His voice cracked, disbelief and anger mixing in a toxic cocktail. I nodded. "Yes, and there's nothing you can do about it. The papers are signed, the keys handed over, the transfer complete. It's theirs now." Samantha's confident composure melted. She looked to Mark, her perfect mask of superiority cracking. For the first time, I saw doubt in her eyes. "Fear, even you. You can't do that." "That's," he began, but I interrupted him. "I can, and I did," I said firmly. "You left, Mark. You betrayed me, brought your lover into our home, flaunted your disrespect. I could have waited for the perfect moment, But why wait? The house isn't just a place, it's a symbol, and I decided that symbols are meant to be respected or destroyed. Mark took a step toward me, but I didn't flinch. I had prepared for this confrontation mentally, emotionally, every possible scenario playing in my mind like a rehearsed script. You think you've won something, he spat, his voice low, dangerous. But there was a crack, fear hiding behind bravado. But you'll regret this. Regret. I laughed softly, almost sadly. Regret is yours, Mark, not mine. I've spent weeks planning this, making sure everything was irreversible. You underestimated me. You assumed I would beg, cry, wait for you. But I didn't. I acted. Samantha finally spoke, her voice quivering. We can get it back, right? Her bravado was gone, replaced with panic. No, I said, stepping closer, my eyes locked on hers. Not anymore. Not ever. Mark's fists clenched. He took another step, but the reality was sinking in. The house, the life he assumed was his for the taking, was gone. Just like the trust he had shattered. I moved past them, walking toward the door as if leaving were the most natural thing in the world. I hope you enjoy your new home, I said over my shoulder, because this chapter ends here. And with that, I stepped outside, the morning sun warming my face. The weight of betrayal finally lifting from my shoulders. The street was quiet, the air crisp, the sound of their shocked voices fading behind me. I had won not through confrontation, not through violence, but through strategy, patience, and a refusal to be broken. For the first time in months, I felt a strange, exhilarating freedom, the kind that comes not from vengeance, but from reclaiming what is rightfully yours, the power, the dignity, the control. And I knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. The real story, the fallout, the drama, the chaos was yet to come. Because sometimes, the most powerful weapon isn't anger, it's action. I didn't drive far, just a few blocks down, where I could park beneath a jacaranda tree and sit in silence while my hands trembled against the steering wheel. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs from the inside. Strength looks calm on the outside, but inside, it shakes. It always does. Through the windshield, I stared at nothing, replaying the look on Mark's face when the truth finally landed. That wasn't anger, not yet. That was panic. The kind of panic men feel when they realize control has slipped from their hands. My phone buzzed. Once, twice, then again. Mark. I let it ring. Then Samantha. I laughed quietly to myself. The sound surprised me. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't cruel. It was light. Free. I had spent years swallowing my voice, my instincts, my suspicions, and now, here I was, choosing silence on my terms. When I finally answered, it wasn't Mark. It was his mother. Her voice came sharp and clipped through the speaker. What have you done? She demanded. I leaned back, staring up through the windshield at the branches above me. I protected myself, I said calmly. You had no right, she snapped. That house belonged to my son? I smiled. No, I corrected. That house belonged to the woman who paid the mortgage while your son played husband to another woman. Silence, then a scoff. This is petty. This is childish. I felt something click into place inside me, a final lock snapping shut. What's childish, I said evenly, is a grown man bringing his mistress and her entire family back to a home he abandoned. Expecting applause, she hung up. I didn't flinch. Another call came through. Mark again. I answered this time. You think you're clever, he growled. You embarrassed me. In front of everyone. I closed my eyes. No, I said. You embarrassed yourself. I just stopped covering for you. You ruined everything, he shouted. No, I replied softly. You did. I just ended the illusion. In the background, I could hear Samantha crying, loud, performative, the kind of crying meant to pull sympathy from men who mistake noise for pain. Tell her to calm down, Mark snapped at someone off phone. I laughed, actually laughed this time. You brought her into my house, I said. Now she can cry in someone else's. You think you can just erase me, he said through clenched teeth. I already did, I answered. Legally, financially, emotionally. He went quiet. That silence was everything. I ended the call and finally drove away. By the time I reached my sister's apartment, the adrenaline had drained from my body, leaving behind exhaustion so deep it felt like grief. She opened the door without asking questions and pulled me into a hug so tight I almost broke. Proud of you, she whispered. That was when I cried. Not because of Mark. Not because of Samantha. but because I had survived years of emotional neglect and betrayal and still found the courage to walk away standing tall. Meanwhile, back at the house, the illusion was unraveling fast. I found out later that the new owners arrived sooner than expected. A young couple, pregnant, excited, blissfully, unaware of the drama unfolding in their driveway. Mark tried to argue, tried to threaten, tried to claim ignorance, but the paperwork was airtight. Samantha's father reportedly asked, "Why didn't you tell us the house wasn't yours?" Samantha screamed at Mark in front of the neighbors. Her mother accused him of lying. Her brother laughed. And Mark, my once confident husband, stood in the middle of the driveway with nowhere to go. No house, no wife, no dignity. I wasn't there to see it, but I didn't need to be, because sometimes the sweetest justice happens when you're not even watching. That night, I lay on my sister's couch staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the signs I had ignored. The late nights, the sudden secrecy, the emotional distance disguised as stress. I thought love meant patience. I thought loyalty meant endurance. I was wrong. Love means respect. Loyalty means honesty. And endurance. Endurance without boundaries is just slow self-destruction. The next morning, my lawyer called. "They're scrambling," she said. "He's asking if there's any way to reverse the sale." I smiled. "There isn't," I replied. "Good," she said, "because legally, you're untouchable." Untouchable. I rolled the word around in my mind. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting. I wasn't pleading. I wasn't explaining myself. I was done. And Mark was about to learn that losing a house is nothing compared to losing the woman who built his life. I thought selling the house would be the hardest thing I'd ever do. I was wrong. The hardest part came afterward, when Mark realized anger wouldn't work and decided to try something far more dangerous. Guilt. The first message came at dawn. "I made a mistake. I never stopped loving you." I stared at the screen, coffee growing cold in my hands. Amazing how men rediscover love only after losing convenience. I didn't respond. Minutes later, another message arrived. "You know how my childhood was. I panic when I feel like I'm losing everything." There it was. The wounded boy routine. The same story he used every time he crossed a line. The same excuse I had swallowed for years, mistaking trauma for entitlement. I blocked him by noon. He showed up in person. At my sister's building. I watched him through the peephole, unshaven, eyes red, shoulders slumped. A carefully crafted image of regret. He knew how to look broken without actually being accountable. My sister reached for the door. "No," I said quietly. "Let me." I opened it halfway. "What do you want, Mark?" He looked up like he'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. "I just want to talk. You've talked enough for a lifetime." He flinched. "Good. They kicked us out," he said. "Her family. They said I lied to them." I leaned against the doorframe. "You did. They're blaming me for everything," he continued, voice cracking. "She's furious. She says I ruined her reputation." I raised an eyebrow. "And you thought telling me this would make me feel—" "What sympathy?" He swallowed. "I thought you'd understand." I laughed, not loud, not cruel, just incredulous. "You came back from a trip with your lover and her family, Mark. You brought them to my house like trophies, and now you want understanding." He reached from my hand. I stepped back. "Don't," I warned. "I didn't plan for it to go this far," he said desperately. "It just happened." That sentence snapped something inside me. "No," I said firmly, "it didn't happen. You chose it. Every lie, every hotel room, every moment you looked me in the eye and pretended." Tears welled in his eyes. "I'm nothing without you." That was the moment I knew he hadn't changed at all, because love doesn't say that. Control does. "I'm done," I said. "Please leave." He sank to his knees, actually knelt. Neighbors passing slowed their steps. "I'll do anything," he whispered. "Please, don't destroy me." I looked down at him, this man who once made me feel small, invisible, replaceable, and I felt nothing. "You destroyed yourself," I said quietly. "I just stopped saving you." I closed the door. The backlash was swift. By evening, his family was calling. Accusations, insults, thinly veiled threats. "How could you humiliate him like that? You should have handled this privately. You're cruel." Funny how betrayal is always private, but consequences are expected to be silent. Then came the social media posts. Samantha posted vague quotes about heartless women and fake wives. I didn't respond. Instead, I did something far more powerful. I told the truth. Not dramatically, not emotionally, just facts. I shared nothing explicit, no names, no insults, just time, just proof, just receipts. Messages poured in. People I barely knew reached out. I'm so sorry. I always suspected something was off. I wish I had your courage. Samantha deleted her account by midnight. 2 days later, Mark's job called me. Apparently, he had listed our house as his permanent address for company benefits. Benefits tied to employment, stability, benefits that no longer existed. Weren't happy. He was placed on leave. Unpaid. I found out because he called me screaming, "You ruined my career." No, I corrected your lies. You knew this would happen. I knew the truth would surface. I said, "That's not the same thing." He broke down completely. "I don't have anywhere to go," he sobbed. I paused, then spoke with clarity I didn't know I possessed. What happens when you build your life on deception? That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in years. No anxiety, no waiting, no hoping he'd come home early or tell the truth. I woke up free. But Mark wasn't done. Because when men lose power quietly, they retreat. When they lose it publicly, they get dangerous. And I could feel it. The calm before the next storm. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Plain white envelope, no return address, my name typed, not written. I knew before I opened it what it was meant to do: intimidate me. Inside was a notice from Mark's lawyer, or at least someone claiming to be. Legal language filled the page, thick with words like marital assets, unauthorized sale, emotional distress. The message was clear. He wanted to frighten me into backing down. I read it twice, then a third time, and I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was desperate. I forwarded it to my lawyer with one line: "Is this as weak as it looks?" Her response came 10 minutes later: "We're about to ruin his entire case." I smiled. That afternoon, Samantha showed up, no warning, no call. Just her standing outside my sister's apartment building, like she had every right to be there. She looked different up close, less polished, less confident. Her eyes were red, makeup smudged. She was wearing expensive clothes that now felt like armor rather than elegance. "You think you won," she said as soon as she saw me. I crossed my arms. "I know I did," she scoffed. "You trapped him. You planned this." I tilted my head. "Funny. I don't remember forcing him into my bed after he married me." Her jaw tightened. "He told me you were cold, controlling, that you didn't love him anymore." I nodded slowly. "And you believed a man who cheated on his wife with you?" She faltered. "I loved him," she snapped. "No," I replied calmly. "You loved the version of him that existed because I carried his responsibilities." Her face flushed. "You took everything from him." I stepped closer. "No, took back what he stole from me." Her voice cracked. "He has nothing now. That's not my problem." She looked around nervously. People were watching. "You think you're some kind of hero," she hissed. "Women like you always pretend to be victims." I leaned in, lowering my voice. "I don't pretend. I survived." Her confidence collapsed. "You'll regret this," she said weakly. I smiled. "So far, I'm sleeping great." She stormed off. The real shock came that night. My lawyer called after hours. "Did you know about the offshore account?" she asked. I sat up. "What offshore account?" Silence. Then, "Mark moved money. A lot of it, over the past 3 years." My stomach dropped. Money I thought we were saving. Money I thought went into investments. Money that quietly disappeared. "He hid it using shell accounts," she continued. "And guess what?" I held my breath. "He used your name." The room spun. "That's fraught," I whispered. "Yes," she said. "And now it's leverage." The next morning, Mark showed up again, this time angry. "You went digging," he accused. "No," I said. "Your lies surfaced. You're trying to destroy me." I stared at him. "You already did. I'm just holding the mirror." He paced like a caged animal. "If you expose that account, I'll go to prison," he said. "That was your choice," I replied. He dropped his voice. "What do you want?" I finally looked him dead in the eyes. Freedom. His face drained of color. "I want the divorce finalized. Clean. No delays. No harassment. No games. You walk away. And the money?" he asked. I smiled thinly. "That's between you and the law." He sank into a chair. For the first time, he understood. I wasn't afraid. That night, I packed my last box. Not from a house, from a marriage, and I knew something he didn't. This wasn't the end, this was the moment. Everything flipped, because once secrets come into the light, they don't go quietly. The first person to abandon Mark was the one he never thought would, his father. I found out through a voicemail meant for someone else. Mark had called me by accident, his hands shaking. Too much to dial straight, and left a message full of rage and disbelief. He won't even answer my calls. Mark's voice cracked. He says I shamed the family. I deleted the message without responding. That silence hurt him more than any argument ever could, because Mark was raised to believe appearances were everything: reputation, respect, control, and now every pillar holding up his carefully constructed image was crumbling in public view. Word spread fast. Not rumors, facts. The house sale, the mistress, the hidden accounts. People talk when the truth finally has space to breathe. Mark's mother tried damage control. She reached out to mutual friends, painting me as unstable, emotional, vindictive. But the problem with lies is they don't survive documentation. And I had documentation. Receipts don't argue. They don't shout. They simply exist. Samantha wasn't faring any better. Her employer placed her on leave pending investigation. Apparently, company policy didn't favor employees involved in ethical scandals, especially ones tied to financial deception. She called me late one night. I almost didn't answer. Almost. What do you want? I asked. She was crying. Real crying this time. He promised me a life, she sobbed. He said you were just a formality. I exhaled slowly. And you believed that, I said gently, because you wanted it to be true. I lost everything, she whispered. I closed my eyes. So did I replied. The difference is, I didn't lie to get it. She hung up. And for the first time, I felt something close to peace. The legal process moved fast after that. Once the offshore accounts surfaced, Mark's threats vanished. His lawyers stopped sending letters. His tone shifted from aggressive to cautious, then to silent. Men who rely on intimidation don't know what to do when fear no longer works. My lawyer filed a motion to expedite the divorce. No contest. No alimony. Full financial separation. Mark signed within 48 hours, not because he wanted to, because he had no choice. On the day the papers were finalized, I didn't celebrate. I sat alone in my car outside the courthouse, holding the envelope in my lap, breathing deeply. 10 years. 10 years of compromise, forgiveness, and emotional labor. Gone. Bob. I wasn't grieving. I was shedding. Like a skin that no longer fit. The final blow came unexpectedly. Mark's company terminated his employment. Officially, violation of trust and financial misconduct. Unofficially, he was a liability. He texted me that night. I have nothing left. I stared at the message for a long time, then replied with the truth. You still have yourself. I just stopped carrying you. He didn't respond. A week later, I drove past the old house. The new owners had painted the door blue, bright, hopeful, alive. Didn't feel sadness. I felt pride, because I didn't just walk away. I walked forward. That night, my sister asked me, do you hate them? I thought carefully. No, I said. Hate would mean they still matter. And that was the moment. I knew I had one. Not because Mark lost. Not because Samantha fell, but because I reclaimed something no one could ever take from me again. My peace. I thought silence meant the end. I was wrong. Silence, I learned, is sometimes just the pause before desperation turns ugly. It started subtly. A missed call at midnight, an email marked urgent, a message from a number I didn't recognize that simply read, "We need to talk. It's serious." I didn't respond. That was my first mistake, because when Mark realized he could no longer reach me directly, he went after something else. My name. It happened on a Thursday morning. I was standing in line at a cafe, sunlight pouring through the glass windows, when my phone started vibrating nonstop. Notifications stacked on top of each other so fast I couldn't read them. A woman behind me tapped my shoulder. "Are you okay?" I nodded, stepped aside, and opened my messages. And my stomach dropped. Mark had posted a long statement online. Public, emotional, carefully crafted. He talked about mental instability, about a wife who turned vindictive, about a man pushed too far. He never said my name. He didn't have to. Friends began calling, old coworkers texting, distant relatives suddenly concerned. Is this true? Do you need help? What's really going on? That's how men like Mark work. They don't attack your body, they attack your credibility. I sat in my car afterward, hands shaking, heart pounding, not from fear, but from anger so sharp it burned. He was trying to rewrite history again that afternoon. My lawyer called. He's testing you, she said calmly. He wants a reaction. And if I stay silent, I asked, he escalates. I stared out the window. What if I don't? She paused. Then you end this permanently. I didn't respond online. Instead, I did something Mark never expected. I showed up that evening. There was a small gathering at a mutual friend's house, something Mark had assumed I wouldn't attend, something he believed he still controlled socially. He was wrong. When I walked in, the room went quiet. Mark froze. He hadn't seen me in weeks, not really seen me. I wasn't angry. I wasn't defensive. I wasn't broken. I was calm. That terrified him. You shouldn't be here, he whispered, stepping toward me. I was invited, I replied, just like you. People were watching. He tried to smile, to laugh it off. I think you're confused, he said loudly. You've been under a lot of stress. I turned to face him fully. No, I said clearly. I'm the clearest I've ever been. The room held its breath. You cheated? I continued calmly. You lied. You hid money. You brought your lover and her family into a house you no longer owned. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mark's face reddened. You sold that house behind my back. He snapped. Yes, I said. After you abandoned it. You're twisting things. No, I replied. I'm finishing them. Someone asked quietly, is this true? Mark opened his mouth. Nothing came out, because lies fall apart when truth is spoken without fear. Samantha wasn't there. Later learned she had cut off all contact with him days earlier. She left a note. I didn't sign up to be the villain in your story. Even she was done. Mark followed me outside. Afterward, you humiliated me. He hissed. I stopped walking. I corrected the narrative. You enjoy this, he accused. I turned. Slowly. No, I said. I endured it. There's a difference. His voice cracked. I gave you everything. I met his eyes. No, I gave you everything, and you spent it on someone else. He reached for me. I stepped back. This is the last conversation we will ever have, I said quietly. You don't get to define me anymore. Not privately, not publicly, not ever again. He stood there, shaking, small, uncertain, and for the first time, powerless. That night, I blocked him everywhere, every platform, every number, every thread. I changed my email. I closed shared accounts. I erased the last digital fingerprints of a man who thought access was permanent. A week later, something unexpected happened. I received a job offer, out of state, a promotion I had once turned down because Mark wasn't ready to move. The salary was higher. The role was bigger. The timing was perfect. I accepted without hesitation. As I packed my things, I found an old photo of us smiling, hopeful, young. I didn't cry. I whispered goodbye, not to him, to the woman I used to be, the one who thought love meant tolerating disrespect. On my last night in the city, I stood on the balcony and looked at the skyline. I felt something unfamiliar. Excitement. Freedom. Power. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that comes when no one owns your future but you. Mark tried to call once more. From a blocked number, I didn't answer. Because some doors don't need closure, they need distance. I thought leaving the city would quiet everything. I was wrong. Distance doesn't erase consequences, it just gives them room to catch up. My new apartment was still half unpacked when the first letter arrived, official heavy, kind of envelope that doesn't bring good news. I recognized the return address immediately, the district court. I sat at the small kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator, the only sound in the room, and opened it carefully. Inside was a notice confirming what my lawyer had hinted at weeks ago. Mark was under formal investigation. Financial fraud, identity misuse, tax evasion. The offshore account wasn't just suspicious, it was criminal. And this time, there was no wife left to shield him. I felt no joy reading it, only a deep, grounding sense of inevitability. This was always where his choices were leading. I had just stepped out of the way. 2 days later, my lawyer called. He's talking, she said. I closed my eyes. Talking. That word carried weight. He's trying to negotiate immunity, she continued. He claims you didn't know anything. I laughed softly. Of course he does. There was a pause. But that's not all, she added. He admitted something else. My chest tightened. He's claiming Samantha wasn't the first. The room seemed to tilt. What do you mean? I asked slowly. He confessed to multiple affairs, over several years, some overlapping, some paid for with joint funds. I said nothing. Not because I was shocked, but because a strange clarity washed over me. Every late night, every unexplained trip, every moment I felt invisible. None of it had been imagined. I had trusted my instincts and been told they were wrong. I wasn't wrong. That night, I went for a walk alone. The city was unfamiliar but welcoming. Streetlights glowed softly. People passed without knowing my story, and that anonymity felt like oxygen. I stopped at a small park and sat on a bench, letting the truth settle. Mark hadn't just betrayed me once. He had built a life of betrayal and asked me to decorate it. The next surprise came from someone I never expected to hear from again. Alina, my college roommate. She hadn't spoken to me in years, not since Mark subtly, strategically pushed her out of my life. He never liked her, said she was too blunt, too observant, too close to the truth. Her message was short. I heard what happened. I always wondered when it would come out. We met for coffee the next day. She looked at me for a long moment before speaking. You know he tried something with me, right? My heart skipped. What? Years ago, she said. At your birthday party. You'd stepped outside. He followed me into the kitchen. My hands clenched around the mug. He said you wouldn't mind, that you trusted him completely. My stomach churned. I shut it down, she continued. And after that, you stopped calling. I always suspected why. I swallowed hard. He hadn't just betrayed me privately. He had isolated me deliberately, tier by tier, connection by connection. I'm sorry, she said softly. I should have told you. No, I replied. You survived it. That's enough. We hugged tightly, and something inside me healed. A week later, Mark called my lawyer directly. He wanted to speak to me. I said no. He sent a letter. Instead, handwritten, desperate. I never meant to hurt you. I don't know why I'm like this. I need you to tell them you knew nothing. Please. I read it once, then tore it in half. Because here's the truth, he never understood. Love doesn't excuse harm, and forgiveness doesn't mean self-sacrifice. The investigation moved fast. Accounts were frozen, assets seized, names exposed. Samantha's name surfaced to not as a victim, not as a villain, but as someone who had known more than she admitted. She tried to reach out. I ignored her. Some conversations expire. Then came the call that changed everything. Mark had been arrested, not dramatically, not publicly, quietly, early morning, no spectacle, just consequences. I sat on the edge of my bed afterward, staring at the wall, feeling something unexpected. Belief, not because he fell, but because I was no longer tied to the weight of his lies. That evening, I received a message from an unknown number. It was short. I see you now. I should have listened. It was from his mother. I didn't respond. Understanding that arrives too late, doesn't need an audience. As the sun set that night, I stood on my balcony, city lights flickering to life below. I thought about the woman I had been, patient, loyal, forgiving to a fault, and the woman I was becoming, strong, clear, untouchable. The story wasn't over yet, but the truth was finally free. I didn't want to go to court, not because I was afraid, but because I knew what it would mean. Court isn't about truth the way people imagine it. It's about facts, stripped of emotion, reduced to dates, numbers, and signatures. And yet, I also knew something else. If I didn't show up, part of my story would be told without me. So I went. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Sterile, neutral, designed to swallow, feeling whole. I sat quietly in the back, hands folded, eyes forward. Then Mark was brought in. I barely recognized him. The confidence was gone, the sharp suits replaced with something generic, borrowed. His shoulders slumped. His eyes darted around like a man who finally realized there was nowhere left to hide. When his gaze landed on me, he froze. I didn't look away, not out of anger, out of closure. The prosecutor laid it all out. The hidden accounts, the falsified documents, the misuse of my identity. My name echoed in that room over and over again, attached to crimes I didn't commit. And yet, for the first time, I wasn't carrying the weight of them. Mark's lawyer tried to soften the narrative. He spoke of stress, of poor judgment, of a man who lost his way. But the judge didn't flinch. Because getting lost is different from leaving a trail of lies behind you. Then something happened that no one expected. Mark stood up. I'd like to speak, he said. The room went still. Even his lawyer looked stunned. The judge nodded, and Mark, my husband of 10 years, finally told the truth. Not all of it, but enough. I betrayed my wife, he said, voice shaking. Repeatedly, I used her trust as a shield. I convinced myself I deserved more, and I took it. I held my breath. I isolated her, he continued. I made her doubt herself so I wouldn't have to face who I was. The words landed like blows, not because they hurt, but because they validated everything I had endured in silence. I'm guilty, he said, not just legally, morally. The judge thanked him and sentenced him anyway. Consequences don't disappear. Just because regret finally shows up. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. I didn't stop. I didn't speak. I didn't owe anyone a soundbite. My silence was my power now. That evening, I went home and sat alone. I expected to feel something dramatic. Triumph, relief, vindication. What I felt instead was calm, the kind that comes when the noise finally stops. Days later, I received a letter from Mark. The final one. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know you were never weak. I was afraid of how strong you were. I read it once, then placed it in a drawer, not to keep, but to remember how far I had come. The last revelation came quietly, from the court records. One of the accounts, Mark hid. He had started it before we were even married. He had planned to deceive long before he said I do. And strangely, that knowledge freed me, because it meant the betrayal was never about me, it was always about him. That night, I stood in front of the mirror and looked at my reflection. No makeup, no armor. Just a woman who had survived the collapse of everything she thought was real, and built something truer in its place. I didn't lose a marriage. I escaped a lie. They never tell you what happens after justice. After the courtroom's empty, after the messages stop, after the name that once defined your pain fades from conversation, they make it seem like the ending. It isn't. It's the beginning, but a quieter one, and quiet takes getting used to. The first few weeks after the trial felt unreal, like I was living inside a body that hadn't quite caught up with the truth yet. I would wake up expecting anxiety to greet me the way it had for years. Tight chest, racing thoughts, that familiar sense of bracing for impact. But it didn't come. Instead, there was stillness. Sometimes that stillness scared me more than chaos ever did. Because chaos is loud, predictable, tells you when to react. Peace doesn't. Peace asks you who you are when no one is hurting you anymore. I threw myself into work at first, not to escape, but to anchor myself. My new role challenged me in ways that excited me again. People listened when I spoke, trusted my decisions, valued my instincts. No one questioned my clarity. No one diminished my intelligence. No one benefited from my silence. And every time I realized that, something inside me straightened its spine. I started therapy. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand how I had survived for so long in a story that wasn't written for my happiness. My therapist once asked me, "When did you stop asking for more?" I didn't answer right away, because the truth was I didn't remember ever asking. I had been trained to accept, to adapt, to endure. That ends quietly, to not with a dramatic declaration, but with a simple refusal to keep shrinking. I redecorated my apartment slowly, not because it needed it, but because I did. I chose colors I liked, not ones that blended in. Furniture that felt comfortable, not impressive. Art that made me feel something, instead of explaining something. For the first time, my space reflected me. No compromises. No negotiations. No walking on eggshells around someone else's moods. One evening, Alina came over with takeout and wine. We sat on the floor, backs against the couch, laughing about nothing in particular. "You know," she said, "you seem lighter." I smiled. "I am. Not because he's gone," she added, "but because you came back. That stayed with me." People started treating me differently. Not cautiously, respectfully. Friends stopped asking how I was coping and started asking what I was doing. Next stop, men stopped approaching me like I was available for saving and started approaching me like I was unavailable for nonsense. That shift wasn't accidental. It was earned. I ran into Samantha once. Pure coincidence. A grocery store aisle. Late evening. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically. Internally. She hesitated before speaking. "I'm sorry," she said, for everything. I studied her face, not with anger, not with judgment, just clarity. I forgive you, I said, and I meant it. Because forgiveness isn't about absolution. It's about releasing weight you're tired of carrying. She nodded, eyes shining, and walked away. So did I. At night, when the world slowed down, memories still surfaced, but they didn't cut anymore. They floated. Observed, filed away as proof, not wounds. I could look at the past without wanting to change it, because it led me here. One afternoon, my lawyer called. Everything's finalized, she said. There's nothing left tying you to him. I thanked her and hung up, then sat quietly for a long time. 10 years. Untangled. Just like that, I celebrated alone that night. No party, no announcement. Just a walk by the river, watching the city lights reflect off the water. I thought about how close I had come to losing myself completely. And how far I had come without realizing it. I didn't become bitter. I became precise. I didn't harden, I strengthened. I didn't close my heart, I protected it. Difference. Sometimes people ask me if I believe in love anymore. I smile. Yes, I say, but not the kind that demands silence in exchange for security. I believe in love that expands, not contracts, that supports, not consumes, that recognizes strength instead of fearing it. As I stood by the river that night, a realization settled over me, undeniable. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living, and nothing, not betrayal, not loss, not even the past had the power to take that away from me again. Endings are strange things. They're never as loud as beginnings, never as dramatic as pain. They arrive quietly when you finally stop looking back. It was almost a year after everything ended when I realized something had changed for good. Was standing in front of my bathroom mirror, brushing my hair before work, when the thought hit me without warning. I hadn't thought about Mark in weeks, not with anger, not with curiosity, not even with resentment. He had become irrelevant. And that was the true ending. People assume closure comes with apologies, with justice, with consequences. But closure doesn't come from what they do. It comes from the moment you no longer need their story to make sense of yours. I stopped introducing myself as someone who had survived betrayal, stopped explaining my past to justify my boundaries. I stopped carrying proof of pain like a badge, because I wasn't that woman anymore. I was the woman who chose herself and never apologized for it. One afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. I hope you're well. I knew who it was before I even checked. Mark. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I deleted it. No response, no explanation. No reopening doors that took so much strength to close. That was my answer. Life kept unfolding in quiet, beautiful ways. I traveled alone for the first time. No compromises, no negotiations, no guilt. I woke up early just to watch the sun rise over places I'd never seen before. I learned that solitude isn't loneliness when you finally enjoy your own company. I made new friends, ones who didn't know my past and didn't need to. Ones who met me as I was, not as who I used to be. I laughed louder. I slept deeper. I trusted myself completely. And then, one evening, something unexpected happened. I felt ready, not for someone else, for myself, ready to dream again. To plan without fear, to imagine without bracing for disappointment, ready to believe that my life could be expansive, joyful, and mine. I thought back to the woman I was the day Mark came back from that trip, the woman who stood in an empty house and told the truth without raising her voice, the woman who sold the house not out of revenge, but out of clarity. She didn't know it then, but that decision wasn't just about property, it was about ownership. Of her life, her future, her worth. I used to think strength looked like endurance, like staying, like forgiving endlessly. I know better. Now, strength looks like walking away without needing to be chased. It looks like choosing peace over explanation. It looks like knowing when something no longer deserves access to you. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: betrayal doesn't break strong women, it reveals them. I didn't win because Mark lost. Didn't rise because Samantha fell. I won because I stopped fighting to be chosen and chose myself. Instead, I rose because I refused to carry shame that was never mine. I healed because I honored the truth even when it cost me everything. Familiar. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about that house. Not with sadness, but with gratitude, BAFTA selling it forced me to stop living inside someone else's version of my life. And start building my own. This story doesn't end with revenge. It ends with freedom, with a woman standing in her own space, emotionally, mentally, spiritually unapologetic and unafraid. It ends with peace that no one can steal. So, if you're listening to this and you're standing at the edge of a decision you're scared to make, if you're being asked to stay small, to keep someone else comfortable, if you're holding on because walking away feels like losing, let me tell you this: you don't lose yourself by leaving, you lose yourself by staying where you're not respected. I didn't just survive betrayal, I outgrew it, and I walked away whole.